Hey, it's Seth Sherapak. Welcome to the Quiet Authority. Great to see everybody today. And this is my live stream on persuasive communication and on scaling your business and your life past your income plateau. And today we're talking about something that is incredibly controversial to a lot of people, but it's also very, very important if you are doing any type of selling, especially if it's one on one. If you're taking sales calls on Zoom or in person, if your role, whether it's a salesperson at a company or for your company, involves you having conversations that are supposed to end in the person giving you money or saying yes or signing a contract, especially if there's a lot of money on the line, that's called high ticket selling, right? This is going to be the most important video that you've ever seen. I know that's a big claim, but you're going to see why in just a second. Now, I have managed multiple call centers for a few decades ago, actually, several of them, where I was the person in charge of training people on how to become better at high ticket closing. And I didn't fall into that role by accident. I know some sales managers will get hired for a role, but they can't actually sell themselves. I've seen that a lot of times. But I actually got promoted to that role because I broke the sales records at the company within the first month. And so I discovered something very interesting during my time there, also at the other places that I've been, and also working with entrepreneurs who do high ticket closing. They're booking calls off of funnels or they're booking calls off of leads that they bought. No matter how your leads are getting to you, if you're doing any one on one selling or persuasion where you're supposed to end with the person saying yes and remaining committed to that yes with their actions or with their money, this is going to be very important for you because I am going to tell you something today that is probably going to challenge everything that you've heard in your training about how to become better at sales. And you're going to learn why there are so many sales training courses, seminars. Some of them are very expensive out there that you buy it, you go through it, you apply it, and a month later, you're using maybe one thing that you learned, and it's not really moving the needle. You see, most sales and negotiation training trains you to overcome objections. That's most of the training you see out there. And some of it, again, people are charging a lot of money for. And ironically, a lot of these courses are created by people who, because they didn't do very well in selling and couldn't make any money doing that, they decided to put a course together and sell it. I'm not going to name anybody specifically, but you probably have bought courses like this yourself. But it's all about overcoming objections. And you may be studying some things like this yourself, memorizing different scripts about how to overcome the spouse objection, the money objection, the let me think about it objection, the competitor objection, which are the four main categories. And you still just don't feel like you're moving the needle. But have you noticed that the people who really close like 40, 50, 60% of the calls that they make, and those people do exist, and who not only that collect bigger payments up front and actually get the person after they've said yes to stay committed to the program instead of ghosting or going MIA and actually following the program, whatever it is, a business or fitness program, actually cooperating with the expert who's guiding them in the program. And it's just an all around better experience for everybody. But have you noticed that people who close deals like that, if you ever watch them, and I've watched a lot of them, they don't get objections. The end of the call just appears to be the end of a conversation where maybe there's a couple of very, very light questions about the next steps, and then the person's collecting their money. Do you think that that's a coincidence? That they aren't getting any objections? I used to hear this all the time from the people who worked alongside me in the sales world, and they would also say it about some of the other top salespeople. And when I say top salesperson, usually in any sales environment, there's about 10 to 20% of the people who are making almost all the sales and everybody else is struggling. That is true in every sales environment. It's called the 80-20 rule. It actually is true in businesses and in economies. And you've probably seen this for yourself. There's that person out there who just seems to be cleaning up. And you're thinking, what the heck is this person doing? And you watch them and you listen to them and you don't really hear any difference between what you're doing and what they're doing. There just seems to be this mysterious talent or gift that the person has. And what I used to hear a lot, people used to say this to me and to some of the top salespeople in my call centers, is you get a lot of laydowns. A laydown is when someone just says yes at the end of the call, yes at the end of the presentation, without any objection, without any back and forth over the spouse or the money objection and all these other things. And it appears to be luck. And this is one of the most crippling beliefs out there in the sales world because I'm a partner in a marketing agency where we help people to generate leads for sales calls like this. And I can't tell you how many times I hear the salesperson say, "These leads are bad. It's the marketing. You need to find new leads." When the truth is that the salesperson does not know how to sell unless they're selling to referrals and to warm traffic, which is not really selling. A referral comes to you, they're mostly sold. You're basically an order taker at that point. But what happens with a lot of people, especially if you're stuck in your warm network and really haven't cracked a case on being able to talk to somebody for the first time, book them on a sales call, and end up collecting a five or $10,000 payment from them or contract. And you know there's people out there who do this. You know who they are. The only reason you haven't been able to do that is because you don't know how to close. Now, you might be listening to this and thinking, well, Seth, I do know how to close. I'm closing people in my warm network now, and I want to be able to close people outside my warm network. Warm network closing is not really closing. And that's going to offend some people, but that's actually a good thing because when you realize and accept that you do not have a skill that you think you have, then you can actually position yourself to learn the skill you need to learn. You see, a lot of people in here are listening to this are going to be stuck within their warm network if you own a business, right? Most of your sales come to you from people you already know through referrals, through a person who you've known for years. But how many of your sales actually come from a person who finds your content or your book or your videos or goes to your sales funnel online? You didn't know who they were 3 days ago. And today they're on a sales call with you signing a contract for five to $10,000. I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen with $100,000 contracts. And you're probably thinking, there's what is it about that person? Well, I'm going to demystify that whole process today. But it starts with understanding that number one, selling to your warm network is a completely different skill set than selling to people who are outside your warm network, people who don't know who you are. And you can't apply the same skill set that you use when closing your warm network to closing people who you don't know and expect to get the same results. The reason I spent so much time talking about that is because as an agency owner, I've seen a lot of people who will say, well, it's the leads. The leads are no good. As soon as they start getting cold leads from paid traffic or from lead purchase leads, and some purchase leads are really terrible. I understand that. They all of a sudden, instead of recognizing, hey, I don't have the skill on how to close these people, what they instead say is it's the leads that are the problem. When the truth is, I could take those same leads, those same 100 leads, give it to a different salesperson, and they would get an astonishingly different result. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story about a rep who used to work for me back when I was doing managing a call center. We also had people who did door to door sales. And one thing that I would do is at the end of the day, when people came to me and talked about the presentations they gave in the homes, I would have them tell me about the people who almost said yes. I would have them tell me exactly where those people were, how far they got into the conversation, and tell me why the person didn't close. And then I would go back out there as like a maintenance visit to the people who they talked to and say, "Hey, I'm such and such as manager. I just wanted to drop in on you. I heard you had a conversation with you about such and such." And by the end of the conversation, not only were they buying, they were buying at higher price points and buying more upgrades from me when the salesperson had already been out there saying the person's not ready to close. Now, why do you think that that happens? Why? How is it that you can give the same leads to a different salesperson and get a completely different result? Because it's not the leads. It has to do with the salesperson's skills. And in all those instances that I just told you about, and I could tell you multiple stories like that, not only with myself, but with other closers, in all those stories, they had one thing in common, and that's that the people bought without these back and forth objection rebuttal rounds. And a lot of sales training teaches you to become like a litigation attorney, where the person's like, let me think about it. And you say, well, what do you need to think about? And then you have this like rebuttal back and forth. It's really combative and is a sign. Here's a gold nugget right here. Objections are a sign that your sales process is broken. Objections are a sign that your sales process is broken. And if you keep trying to fix objections and get better at overcoming objections, and all your training and all your focus is on that, you are trying to fix the wrong problem. Now, think about this. We'll talk about some specifics in a moment, and then I'm going to give you access to some of the training tools and scripts that I have used to help people develop this skill. But think about how much sense this makes. If you don't fix the real problem, is it any surprise that the real problem keeps persisting, right? Overcoming objections will not fix objections. Fixing the sales process earlier in the call and before the call, which we'll talk about in a second, that's where the real money is made. I remember when I was a kid, we lived in this house that was like 70 years old. It was a really old house with really old plumbing that had like these pipes that were so vulnerable that tree roots could grow into them and clog the pipes. And it was a real nightmare for my parents because they constantly had to have plumbers coming out fixing things. And the house was made of wood. And there was one room where there was a leak in the roof, and the leak was like rotting out the wood. It was dripping onto the floor, which was wood below it, and it was rotting the floor out. And specialists kept coming out there and patching and repairing the roof and fixing, fixing what they thought the problem was. But we found out later that the problem was actually in another pipe in another side of the house. That's the upstream problem. But they had spent all this time and money trying to fix something that was not the real problem. It's the same thing when we try to fix our sales or marketing problems. We're still struggling because the thing that we are trying to fix is not the real problem. This applies to so many things in life. Like when I talk about fear of rejection, overcoming fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of asking for money, the reason most people can't overcome fear is because fear is not really what's causing them to shrink back. It's a different emotion, which I talked about on Monday's live call. So if you try to fix a problem that's not the real problem is going to hide behind that fake problem and continue to give you trouble. It's the same thing when it comes to selling. Sales objections are a sign that your process before the call and during the call is broken. And you can study and buy and research and practice all these so-called techniques and strategies for overcoming the spouse objection, the let me think about it objection, the money objection, and you will continue not only to have problems, but to be frustrated because the end of the sales call, as soon as you feel it approaching, you're going to feel this anxiety rising up in your gut because you're like, oh boy, here it comes again. I'm ready for the objections, but at least I've got these scripts that I memorized in this training. But it basically goes the same way. You either get afraid to answer the objection the way you've been trained to, or it just sounds clunky and weird, the script that you use to overcome those objections, and the person can kind of detect that something's off and it starts to feel like an argument. But then people will say, well, this sales training teaches you how to overcome this objection without making it sound like an argument. But even that sounds like an argument and it feels weird. The truth is, people who are really, really super high ticket closers, the reason they make it look easy and the reason they get little or no objections at all is because their sales process, everything that happens before they even start their presentation, is actually working. Objections, again, are a sign that you did not sell the person. And not selling the person either before the call or on the call, you cannot fix that downstream by fixing the leaky pipe of objections at the end. Now, here's why this is good. Because how much of a relief is it to know that you don't have to learn all these weird scripts and rebuttals and back and forth to overcome this objection and that objection? Instead, what I teach people how to do, and I have a whole book that teaches this that I'll give access to. In fact, I'll give away free access to this to anybody who like meets the challenge at the end of this call. Okay. But I teach people how to do this. And I've built an AI that you can put a transcript of your sales conversation into it analyze it based on the points in my books, and it tells you where you lost a sale. And it's usually within the first couple minutes of the call. Sometimes it's 20 or 30 minutes in, but it's not at the objection point. If you're getting objections, this is the last time I'll say it because I hope everybody gets it. If you're getting objections, then your sales process is broken. And you don't fix that by becoming better at overcoming objections. You do it by fixing your sales process. And I'm going to walk through this and tell you exactly what I'm talking about in just a second here. But first, there's something really important to understand. If you're doing one-on-one sales calls, the most important thing to understand is where the person you're about to talk to is at in terms of their internal conversation about the problem you're going to help them solve. This is the most important thing to understand. Where they are in their internal conversation about the problem that they're trying to solve. There are 4 different places they can be. If they're a referral, they're probably at the 4th stage. The 4th stage of that conversation is where they've selected a specific person they want to work with. In this case, that would be you. That's a referral, right? And they're not really considering your direct competitors anymore. They just have a couple questions. They want to talk to you just to make sure, but that's a stage 4. They've done everything except actually give you the money. That person is about as ready as you can get to say yes. That's stage 4. Now, hopefully, you already see what the problem is here. Because if you only know how to close people at stage 4, you're missing out on all these other people out there, most of whom have never heard of you before. And if you don't understand these other 3 stages that I'm going to talk about in just a second, you will not know how to mentally prepare the person for the call, how to make sure that people who get on the call are actually ready to have a sales conversation. And more importantly, when you do get on the call with them, you're not going to know where to start the conversation. Because let's face it, if a person has decided that they're going to select you, they're not going to buy from a competitor, they just have a couple more questions from you. Do you really think that you can talk to that person the same way you would talk to someone who is in stage 1? Now, what is stage 1? Stage 1 is where they have the problem that you help them solve, but they don't even know the problem's name. They don't understand anything about it. They're not really searching for solutions to the problem because they don't know the problem by name. They are aware of the symptoms, and the symptoms are starting to get worse, and they're starting to get worried, but they don't go, well, I'm experiencing these symptoms because I have this problem. Now, the more complex your problem is, the more likely it is that they're in the first stage. I'll give you a few examples just in case this sounds abstract and philosophical. So let's say that you're selling a health product like a fitness program, a diet program, coaching program, personal training. The person, the first symptom that shows up is usually pain in their body or some sort of mental fog or lack of focus, or maybe some problem in like their reproductive system, right? If they're men, like in other words, it's a peripheral thing that they're experiencing. Now, what's at the root of that problem usually has something to do with their immune system, their gut health, their hormones, but they're not thinking, I need hormone treatment. I need an immune system reset or something like that. They're not thinking that I need a diet or a cleanse or I need to fix my gut health. Their level of awareness is so many layers removed from understanding that that's the problem that they only know the symptoms. They've got pain here. They've got lack of focus. They can't sleep. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that if that person shows up on a sales call with you, that you can start the conversation and progress the conversation the same way that you would if the person is in stage 4, where they know the problem by name? They've considered a lot of different possibilities for how to solve it, including doing it themselves, including people who aren't direct competitors with your type of product or service, but they've eliminated all those. They've decided they want to work with someone who offers a service in your category. In this, let's just say in this case, it's acupuncture. That's a service category. Personal trainer is a service category, right? Dietitian is a service category. Uh, there's one of endocrinologist is a service category. So they've decided on the category that you belong to, and they've decided on you. That's a stage 4 person. They've progressed all the way from only understanding the symptoms to understanding what the actual problem is behind the symptoms to selecting a category of service to selecting you. That's stages 1 through 4. And I can promise you this, if you are stuck in your warm network, it is because you have either never heard what I just taught about those 4 stages of awareness, or you've kind of heard about it, but you thought, well, that doesn't really sound that important. Or maybe you haven't developed a step-by-step persuasion system that can first identify where they are and progress them from one place to another. So this is the most important thing. The reason you're getting objections, and I'll give you some specifics in just a moment here, but I'll give you another category just to make sure that this point lands. Let's go to the financial services, right? Let's say that the person who you're talking to, they eventually will want to hire a financial advisor who's going to help them to protect their income from taxes and build a savings for like retirement or something like that. So they've decided they're going to work with a financial advisor. They decided they're going to work with you. Their referral, not only are they sold on the category of financial advisor, but they've selected you as an advisor. That's stage 4. That's an easy referral, right? I mean, no sale is easy, but it's easy enough because they're in stage 4. They are sold on your service category. They're not thinking, well, do I need a financial advisor, or do I need to do like Dave Ramsey's program that I do myself? Or do I need like a financial coach? Or do I need, there's a lot of different people who claim to solve the same problem as you who are not in your direct category, right? So do you really think that you can talk to the people who have not selected your category yet and who are open to a bunch of different solutions, do you think you can talk to them the same way that you can talk to a person who's sold on your service category and sold on you? No, of course not. Hopefully, you're starting to see what the problem is here. I don't care how good you get at overcoming objections. If you don't understand what I just taught about the stages of awareness, you're always going to struggle. You're always going to be stuck in your warm network. And more importantly, and this is really important, you're going to be stuck trying to close everybody, all the four of those different stages on a sales call, which is going to be exhausting because a lot of the people, let's say a person's in stage one, they don't know the problem by name, they don't understand the problem, and you go immediately to talking about why you're the best such and such in this category. You have just completely lost that person, not because they're not a buyer, not because they're a tire kicker, not because they got to think about it, not because they don't have the money, not all those other polite reasons that they give you. The truth is, like, you tried to sell them too soon and you didn't understand that they were way out here. They need to understand what the problem really is. Otherwise, they're not going to look for a solution to it, or you're going to be talking to them about how to solve the symptom. And the symptom's not going to be a really big deal to them. Be like, oh, it'll go away. I'll do this about it. But the more they understand the problem that's driving the symptom, the more sense of urgency that they're going to have, because they see that it's something that if they don't do anything about it right now, it's going to get worse at an accelerated rate. And eventually it's going to lead to a crisis in their life. Right. So I'll take a third one because we've talked about two different categories about the four stages of awareness. And again, the first stage is where they're aware of the symptoms, but not aware of what problem is causing the symptoms. That's the second stage, is where they're aware of the problem, they know about it, and they're actively looking for solutions to the problem, but they are not sold on the type of product or service that you sell. In other words, they're not convinced that a marketing agency is what they need. There's a bunch of different types of things that they're trying to do to solve the problem. They're not convinced that they need a functional doctor. There's a lot of other things they're trying to do to solve their gut health problem. They're not looking for a personal financial advisor who specializes in helping people to protect themselves from taxes and save for retirement. They're looking at a lot of different options. That's a stage two person. They know they have a problem, they want to solve it. But if you come right in talking about being a financial advisor, they're thinking, well, am I even sure that I need a financial advisor? Who cares how good this person is? Who cares that they're better than all the other financial advisors in my area? And you can sell and sell and sell and try to convince people that you're the best financial advisor. But if they're not sold on your service category, guess what you're going to hear at the end of the conversation? Let me think about it. I'm thinking about this, this, and this. And then you're going to be hit by this avalanche of rebuttals that you didn't even know existed because you misdiagnosed the person's stage. You didn't realize that the person was not sold on your service category yet. So we'll talk about what to do about this in a second, right? And this is an easier problem to solve than you think. But the third stage is where, okay, they've decided on someone in your service category. They decided, okay, I want to work with a financial advisor. Okay, I want to work with an acupuncturist. I want to work with a functional health doctor. I want to work with so on and so forth. This person at stage three is starting to ask their friends and family about referrals. So here's what's going to happen. Either you're going to get referred or somebody else is going to get that referral. And even if you end up on a sales call with that person, if you only know how to sell and to market to people who are in stage three, which is most marketers and entrepreneurs only know how to sell to stage three, and most marketing training doesn't even acknowledge these other stages, doesn't even know about them, and only trains you on how to market to stage three people. Now, hopefully you're starting to see the problem here. Number one, that's an incredibly saturated stage of awareness, right? There's a ton of other financial advisors trying to get their attention. And not only that, by the time they get to that phase, by the time their awareness has gone from, okay, I know what the problem is. Okay, I don't like all these other solutions. I want a financial advisor. By the time they get there, guess what they've done? They have asked their family and friends circle for a referral, and that's who you're competing against. That's why you're getting a lot of people who just, if look, and if you're the referral, great, but we don't want to be limited to that. We don't want to be limited only to the people who bring us referrals. But that's what's happening if you're trying to get outside your warm network and reach people who aren't referrals with your marketing, with your book, with your paid content, with your organic content, and you're only focusing on these stage three people. By that time, it's probably too late. Now, here's the good news. Let's say that you are the person who gets on their radar when they're either at stage one or stage two, and you start not to sell them things because you'll lose those people at that stage. You start to raise their awareness. You educate them about what the real root of the problem is. They start to recognize that it's actually happening to them, that it's critical, that it's urgent, that it's going to get worse. And you start making predictions about the crisis it's going to lead them to. And they are thankful to you because they've seen that. And the closer they get to that crisis and the more that those symptoms magnify, the more you look like kind of a prophet because you've told them this is where things are headed if you don't do anything. Then by the time they get to the point where they're at stage two and they're thinking, okay, I got to do something about this. Now, who are they thinking about? They're thinking about you because your marketing content, your book, your organic stuff, your paid ads, your emails, whatever it is actually reaching people at the appropriate stage of awareness. And then, of course, they're deciding, okay, do I need a financial advisor or do I need someone else? But your service category now is more in the top of their mind because they know you. Not only that, you have a uniqueness now. You're the person who has educated them about the problem. You're the one who has told them why all those other alternative solutions aren't going to work. They've been watching your YouTube videos. They've read your entire book that progresses them through this entire process. And by the time they get on a call with you, they're either stage 3 or stage 4. A lot of the time, they're stage 4. Now, what I just explained to you is not solved by getting better at overcoming objections or even getting better at sales. It's solved by the marketing content that you put out there for people to find before they ever meet you. In other words, most problems that appear to be sales problems are really problems with either your lack of marketing content online or you've got a lot of content online, but it's not speaking to any of these stages because you don't know about them. You don't know how to talk to them. All it's talking about is why you're a better financial advisor than others, the value of a financial advisor, all this other stuff, which most people's content is really only about their service category. It's not reaching these other two stages at all. And that represents most of your market. Sure, they may not be at a point where they're ready to make a decision. They may be 6 months out from making a decision. But if you get on their radar earlier, by the time they finally get to the point where they're ready to hire someone in your category, you're going to be probably the only person they're thinking about. And you may get somebody who emails you, if you're doing this right, tomorrow, who is ready to get on a call and talk about next steps and isn't going to haggle about price, isn't going to haggle about the competitors because they've already been prepared. One of my books out there, the Anti-Fragile Sales System, actually has people sometimes coming to me who have been following my work for years. I don't even know who they are. I just know find out later that they're reading my books. And a couple years later, they come to me and they say, hey, I want to work with you. And they don't say a word about what I'm charging. Not a word. Why? Because they have been properly prepared. My book progresses people through these stages. When I help people write books as experts, I teach people how to progress people through these stages. Most people, when they write a book, it doesn't really make a dent in their ability to get strangers to become new clients because they don't understand this process. They just think, well, I've got to get as many people on a call as possible. Maybe I'll do some paid ads. Maybe I'll get a book out there. But they're starting the conversation in the wrong place. So most of what we're trying to do here is a selling problem. Now, let me stop right here. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, this makes a lot of sense, this tells me that I really need to rethink my marketing process. What can I actually start doing about this? There's two options. Now, because I'm not going to talk about any more about marketing today. You can follow me on YouTube and you can follow my marketing advice that actually teaches people this entire process step by step and how to do it. You can go through all my videos. You can kind of learn how to do this yourself, and you can start by trial and error to start to build the funnels, the sales pages, the emails, campaigns, the ads that do it. That's one way to do it. I actually have a client who did that and was incredibly successful, right? But you can also get closer proximity to me in my group coaching program or one-on-one coaching program. I don't have room in one-on-one right now, but I will pretty soon. But if you're listening to this and you're thinking, Seth, I don't want to go through all the trial and error of learning and applying all this stuff. It's taken me decades to learn it. Then we need to talk, okay? But let's talk about, we've tabled that now. The marketing usually is your problem. And let me address something familiar that's probably happened to a lot of people who are doing selling. Are you selling a product where when you get the person on the sales call, the reason for you getting them on the call has nothing to do with the thing you're selling, but you have this bumpy transition point where you've got to now introduce what you're actually doing? Some people feel weird about this. They call it bait and switch. I don't think it's bait and switch. I'll tell you what I think it is in just a second. But you know how hard it is to sell people this way. Like maybe you have like this diagnostic check, this free diagnostic check on their Facebook ads, and they get on the call to do their little diagnostic check, and then by the end of it, you're trying to transfer them into being an agency client. And there's this weird sort of like, how do you transition to the close type thing? Sometimes it happens in the health industry where your free consultation call is about like looking at like their diet or their hormones or something, and they get on there thinking, wow, I'm going to, like make a change in my diet or hormones is going to help me reach my goal, and all of a sudden there's this bumpy transition in the middle where you're transitioning into talking about your coaching. Or you can take any product or service category, right? If you're doing that type of transitional call, you need to stop right away and you need to rethink your marketing, because you should never be on the phone with somebody where you have to make the call about something other than you discussing their product, your actual product, and buying it. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, I can't get anybody on the phone because that's the only way I'm getting anybody on the phone right now. What that tells me is that you're marketing to either stage one or stage two prospects, and you're trying to use one call, which eats up a lot of your time and a lot of your emotional energy, especially if you get to the end of it and you realize that you've done all these things wrong and they just ghost you or say no or say, let me think about it, or say yes, which is worst thing when they say yes, but they don't pay, and then they ghost and they never pay and they never really said yes. If you're doing your marketing that way, I guarantee you're wearing yourself out. You're spending a lot of time and a lot of energy on people who probably aren't showing up. Your show rates are probably really high. You're probably spending a lot of time on calls just to get to the end of it and realize that you are wasting your time the whole time. Or maybe you get your hopes up that the person's actually going to buy it. Like, in 3 days, I'll send you the money, and you never hear from them again. Or I got to talk to my spouse first, but I'll for sure buy on Monday. And then you never hear from them again. You're getting ghosted. That has nothing to do with your selling ability. It has to do with you getting people onto calls who are in stage one or stage two and who need to have been dealt with by your automated marketing content and marketing process, right? That, in other words, the real problem is a marketing problem. If you're doing that transition to the close type selling right now. So that's the first thing. Now let's talk about when a person actually, well, let me just put it this way. Everybody who gets on a sales call with you, the only people you should be doing sales calls with are stage three or stage four prospects. And I guarantee you that your discovery process, your diagnostic questions at the beginning of your sales call probably didn't take any of this into consideration. Your applications on your call application page, your quizzes on your funnels probably didn't take this into consideration. So you can simply make one change in your marketing tomorrow. If you've already got people coming through your pipeline, filling out applications, a lot of them are just not ready yet. You can start to figure out who those people are just by asking questions that help you identify their stage of awareness. And when you do that, let's say they answer and you find out they're in stage one. Well, you're going to send them to a different set of email automations, a different webinar, a different video series, whatever it is, depending on where they are. If they're stage two, obviously those people are going to be different. You cannot talk to all four of these stages the same way. If you do, the responses you get, the sales you make are going to be meager at best. This is why marketing automation, online content, paid ads fails for most people, is because they simply do not know this and they're just guessing. They're reverse engineering somebody else's funnel who was wildly successful because they accidentally kind of fell into the right crack in these stages of awareness and figured out like what works, but they don't really understand why. They can't tell you, well, I used a webinar funnel of people in stage one, which is appropriate for stage one. And then I said this first and that second. My book, Cold Traffic Copywriting, which I'm finishing now, walks you through this entire process and helps you understand which funnel is most appropriate for your audience, either a webinar, a VSL, a sales page funnel, or a retargeting funnel, any of which can have a call booking at the end. Helps you identify that first. And it gives you the specific messaging sequence for delicately moving a person from where they are to stages of awareness all the way here. What most people do is they get someone without knowing it who is in one of the later stages and they overinform them as if they were in the earlier stages. And then the person gets too much information. They say, let me think about it. This was great information, but they don't do anything, or they become overwhelmed by the amount of information you've given them. Or they're in one of the earlier stages. You don't know that they're in one of the earlier stages and you try to sell them too soon and they're gone because they're like, this is just a sales pitch, right? Those people who say this is just a sales pitch, I guarantee you they're buying something somewhere. There's no such thing as a person who never spends money. So all these people who say, well, I don't like sales pitches, this is just a sales pitch. What they're really saying is like, I don't mind being sold to if I really want the thing, if I'm ready for it. Like people love to buy. American consumers, like consumers in the Western world, we love to buy things. Like you look at the consumer debt index, that's really obvious. So why are people so resistant to being sold? Has everything to do with you trying to sell them too soon, too quickly, move them through this process. And most of the time it's because you simply don't know this. You simply don't understand that there are these stages of awareness. But it makes perfect sense. I mean, you don't wake up in the morning thinking like, I need to hire a financial advisor. It starts showing up as subtle symptoms that start really annoying you. Or maybe someone's like having a conversation. We need to do something about this. We need to do something about this until you finally reach a tipping point and you start looking for solutions. But you're not sold on some financial advisor. So you're looking at do it yourself programs and coaches and all kinds of other things. And finally, you settle on, okay, I think I need a financial advisor. And then you start looking at financial advisors. You start evaluating like who is the best amongst the competitors. And there are certain criteria, there's certain mental criteria that a person is using at every one of these stages. And I've identified it over the past few decades because I have pressure tested a lot of messaging and marketing strategies across thousands of live campaigns, not based on theories or things I've read from books, live campaigns about figuring out where a person is and saying the right things to them based on their internal evaluations. And when it comes to that, people are not all that different. You don't have to tailor the message too specifically to one type of person. Human needs are are universal. We need to feel seen. We need to feel safe. We need to feel excited. We need to feel a sense of purpose. We need to feel that like the person understands us who we're going to buy from. We need to feel that they're competent enough to get the result and that they actually care about getting the result. And it really helps if we like the person too, right? And they have some sort of charisma that actually makes them memorable. Those are all the four dimensions of trust. But we tried to build trust too early by proving all those things to a person who isn't even ready for the evaluation process yet. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to think you're just another salesperson. So you should only be selling people on one-on-one sales calls who are at stage 3 or stage 4. Webinars, that's a different story. You can start all the way at stage 1. In fact, stage 1 is the best place for a live presentation funnel like a webinar, live challenge, live workshop, from stage presentation where you actually have 45 to 90 minutes to talk. That's the best place for those people. Second stage, it's better if you have a pre-recorded session like a video sales letter or something like that, where they actually have to pay attention long enough for you to educate them about why the other alternatives out there aren't good and then have the call to action. A lot of people put videos out there to sell their services and they immediately start talking about their services. That's the wrong type of funnel and the wrong type of media for that stage. Stage 3, the best thing you can do for a stage 3 person is a long form website sales page that allows them to quickly grab their evaluation criteria. And I have a formula that shows you where to put each one and what's relevant to that stage so that they can decide, okay, I want to book a call with this person or I want to buy this test product from them. And that's how you get them into your pipeline. But most people just don't know this. And so we've been talking about overcoming objections. There's probably some people listening is like, I had no idea this conversation was going to go here, but you're starting to see the problem. It's not selling. It's not the actual overcoming objections and closing that's the problem. You're probably fine at closing. All you can do is say, which credit card do you want to put this on? That's all you got to say. The reason you're getting all those objections is because you haven't applied any of this stuff yet. So the only people you should actually be talking to one-on-one are in stage 3 or stage 4. If you're getting any of those other people in a one-on-one situation, you are going to burn yourself out or burn your sales staff out. I've seen people try to do that. Call centers who actually only cold call people and try to take them from stage 1 or stage 2 all the way to the close, like they churn through sales per people really quick because it's exhausting to go through that whole thing trying to figure out like how to get the person here. Even people who are good at it shouldn't be doing it. They should create a webinar where they can get a bunch of those people on and they know how to progress them from stage 1 all the way to the end. So there's no reason to be on a one-on-one call with someone who is not at stage 3 or stage 4. Stage 4, they're probably going to have little or no objections, right? We can talk about the stage 4 objections. There's some specific objections that come up at that point, but I want to talk about stage 3 because this is where most of your sales calls are coming, right? And the way you overcome objections at stage 3 is you have to understand, what does a person really care about if they're comparing you to competitors? Now, you ask a question early in the process and say, hey, are there any other financial advisors you're considering right now? Or what's the most important thing for you to have in a financial advisor? Why do you feel like a financial advisor is a good fit? In other words, you're asking them like why they're sold on this category. And they say, well, I don't know. I'm looking also at these. And they tell you a list of other things they're looking at. That person just told you they're in stage 2 And you need to get off the sales call with that person and send them some materials that will actually help them along. And if you're getting a lot of those people on a call, you need to have something out there to prepare those people before they ever get on a call with you. Or you at least need to have a VSL on your thank you page after they booked a call that actually moves the person strategically from stage 2 to stage 3. And if you get on a call with them and you ask, hey, did you check out the video? What do you think of this? And you find out like they're still not there yet, don't waste your time. Get that person educated properly. Like prepare the person properly for stage 3. So you got to find out, first of all, is this person actually in stage 3 of the sales process? And there's one question you can ask in the beginning of the call that will tell you this. How soon are you looking to blank? Now, the blank is obviously the buying decision, right? Now, again, if you're doing one of these bait and switch sales calls where you're starting out the call about something else than what the sales process is about, you're probably thinking, well, I can't say that to them because I don't transition to the close until earlier. You should never be on a call with those people in the first place. You need a webinar or a VSL to prepare those people. That's how you should be selling. If you're not doing that, and you're continuing to ask me like what you should do about this transition to the close, I'm sorry, but you're not taking my advice. You need to fix that in your marketing and you need to not be on the call with those people. So I can't tell you how to fix it on a sales call because that's not the right place to do it. It's in your marketing. Okay. I know I'm being direct about this, but I don't want to see people exhaust themselves by trying to continue to wrestle with people that they could easily sell one to many on a webinar or on a VSL if you know how to do it. So, stage 3, how soon are you looking to hire a financial advisor? Now, a lot of people won't ask this question because they're afraid to ask it. And then they'll go all the way to the close and they'll hear, well, let me think about it. I'm not going to make a decision for 3 other months. And you just wasted 50 minutes talking to that person. You got an objection you could have dealt with in the beginning, right? All right, that just ain't smart. That's what my daddy said. That just ain't, there ain't got no sense you doing that type of stuff. You need to ask that fella really early what his intentions are. But anyway, you'd ask him in the beginning, how soon are you looking to make this decision? Let their response to that question tell you whether or not you should keep talking to them. And if they say, well, I don't know, I'm kind of just looking, guess what that tells you? You steer the conversation in a completely different direction. You say, well, what types of things are you looking at right now? And if they give you an idea, they're in stage 2, say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I don't want to waste your time today. I don't think that this is a worthwhile call for us to have. What I would like you to see is, and then you tell them about the video and why they need to watch it and how it's going to help them to get ready. And if you lose them at that point, you lose them, right? At least you've learned not to spend 45 minutes on a call with someone who's just going to hit you with the same objection at the end anyway. If you don't ask the question now about how ready they are, you will get it later, but you'll have just paid 45 minutes of your time to find out what you could have found out in the first 5 minutes. I have seen this question absolutely transform people's results. How soon do you want to get the alarm system installed? How soon do you want to hire an endocrinologist? How soon do you want to blank? If they don't give you a specific timeline and there's no sense of urgency or importance in their voice, and you'll sense this intuitively in their tone, then that tells you that you don't continue with that call, right? Now, the fear, of course, is that we're going to disqualify. This is a really irrational fear that we need to talk about. The fear, of course, is that you'll end the call too early before you get a chance to pitch them. That's a good thing. You should never be pitching that person in the first place. Because guess what's going to happen? If you hear like a little bit of doubt there, or if you don't ask the question like, well, I'll handle that later, you're going to hear it anyway. I promise you it is going to come out. It's going to. It's like if there's a fire in a room in your house and you shut the door and say, I don't want to deal with that fire right now. It's going to keep burning. It's going to burn your whole house down if you don't do anything about it. So you have to ask that question early because you're going to get it. Now, they tell you, well, I'm looking to make a decision by this Friday. Okay, great. Move on from that. And now you know one thing. You know they're sold on financial advisors. You know they're ready to make a decision pretty soon. Then you go to the next question. Now, let's say at the end that person says, well, let me think about it. We'll say, it sounds like you're ready to make a decision by Friday. So how about we do this? I'll go ahead and get your account started. We get your deposit right now. Tell me what card you want to use for that. Friday, we can actually use for your onboarding call. Now, I know that sounds aggressive to some people, but you're going to get the real objection if you say that. In other words, they've already told you. People are more easily persuaded by things they tell you than by things you tell them. Because if you don't ask the person in the beginning and they're thinking about making a decision by Friday, and you say, well, why don't we make a decision now? Why don't we make a decision by Friday? Now you've pressed that expectation on them. But if they told you in the beginning, here's our deadline, here's when we're making a decision, then it's like, okay, they've given you permission to actually start to be, proactive about moving them forward. And if they really want to buy, like they'll appreciate that. If they resist, if they say, I'm going to make a decision by then, and you start to kind of act like that's the timeline and move ahead with it, and they push back, guess what? they're not telling you the truth. They really didn't want to do it, and they're just trying to get you off the phone. It's better to find that out. Now, this also depends on their communication style and all kinds of things I talk about in my book, but that's the first question. How soon do you want to blank? The second thing you ask is, who else is involved in this decision? Now, this is another question people are afraid to ask. But if you don't ask it, guess what's going to happen? You're going to find out who else is involved in the decision, and you're now going to try to turn the person who's on the phone with you into your salesperson, and they're going to go try to pitch this other person, and you just lost the opportunity to close that deal. If the other decision maker isn't present, you need to get the person on the phone, get them all on the phone and say, look, this is a really important decision. If we're going to proceed with the financial advising, your spouse is going to be a part of that. And I want to make sure that we set you guys up for success. So I only do this if both spouses are on board. When can we both talk? And if they keep pushing back and saying no, say, well, maybe this isn't a good fit, because you basically set a boundary and say that it's required for all decision makers to be present for you to make a decision. And that's true, especially if a business is hiring you. I mean, think about it. How many times have your firm, your agency, whatever it is, been hired for something? Somebody said yes. And then all of a sudden, as you start to deliver the service and start to try to cooperate with the business to get the result, some other decision maker is stonewalling things, is what do they call it? Slow walking things and getting in the way. Why? Because you never got that person on the call in the first place. So it's responsible of you as the person closing the deal to get all decision makers on it so that the service is actually provided to them in the right way. Now, if they say, well, there's nobody else, I'm the decision maker, and then at the end they say there's somebody else, there's a different way to deal with that. But the thing is, they have now told you they're the decision maker, and you can say, well, a few minutes ago you said you're the person making the decision on this. So what questions what doubts do you have about this, right? So you're reminding them of what they said, but you ask this question early on. There goes the spouse objection. Now, if you get it, you've got their response to it, not yours. And you're not locked in all these weird rebuttals. But if you ask this question in the beginning, you'll seldomly get it. And if you do, you can usually say, well, how aware is your spouse of this problem? Or how aware is your business partner of this problem? And they may say, well, they don't think the problem's that serious. They're just wanting to know what the price is. And that's when you got to make a decision about who you're talking to and say, you know what, it sounds to me like they're just going to evaluate this based on price. But based on what we discussed, you've told me the cost of the problem is this, 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 and this. Let's move ahead with it and just go ahead and tell them that you did this. You did this to solve this problem. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, right? Depending on who you're talking about. But if the person who you're on the phone with is a person who cares about the problem, who understands the value of it, who actually sees why they need to hire it, and the other person is just if we can afford it, we can do it. That person should not be a part of the decision-making process unless they've been on the phone with you to discuss it. The person you're talking to is essentially telling you that the other person doesn't care enough to be a part of the decision-making process. And you got to be really delicate about how you do this, but you need to get that person on board and get them to go ask for forgiveness instead of permission. Now, you got to be careful about the way you do that, and you don't always do that. But if they told you in the beginning that they were the decision maker and at the end they come out with somebody else, well, they've told you a mistruth there. So that's why you ask it in the beginning. Now, the third one is, of course, we won't have time to get to all these, but I hope you're starting to see how you deal with these in the beginning by finding out what stage they're in, and then decide and now what you're going to do is you're going to tailor your pitch based on their responses. We won't have time to get into that today, but it's in my book. So we'll talk about that in a second. The third one is, what are your expectations in terms of budget? Like, how much have you budgeted for this? Again, people are afraid to ask this question, but if you're afraid to ask this question early on, I guarantee you're also afraid to ask for money at the end of the call. You need to get over that, right? If you're having a money discussion with somebody, you can't be afraid about asking for money. And it's probably not even fear holding you back anyways, probably something else that I talk about in my other videos. But ask them where they are in terms of their expectations as far as what they're going to pay. And some of these people, they get all the way to the end of your call and they tell you they don't have any money. First of all, they probably do have money and they're just telling you that because they know it's the best way to get rid of you, but they really don't trust you. But people who can be trusted to talk about money are people who are not afraid to ask about it. And if you demonstrate early in the call, look, I want to make sure that we're in the right range here. What's your expectation in terms of budget? And if they don't want to tell you that, if they're not ready to talk about money now, they're not going to be ready to talk about money at the close. And don't waste your time continuing to talk to that person. There are ways you can frame this. There are ways you can ask it depending on their communication style to make sure that they're not defensive and that they see it as a question you're asking to really try to see if you can help. But if you don't ask this question early on, I promise you, you will get the objection later. It's better to get it now, get off the phone, get back out there and find someone who's actually ready to do something. Okay. That's the third question. The fourth question has to do with competitors and what their expectations are when they're hiring someone like you. Now, you've already asked them, how soon are you ready to hire someone in this service category? So we've narrowed it down to this category. And that now you get to the place where you're like, okay, what other things are you? Now, of course, you want to put other questions in conversation in the middle of these, and you don't have to ask them in order, but you have to ask these. Otherwise, you're going to get it later. The most important one that you ask is, okay, what are your expectations? Like, have you hired somebody like this before? What has your experience been like? What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Or maybe they're looking at a few competitors. You say, well, what do you like about this person that you're looking at? What do you like about this other person? And if they won't talk to you about this, I promise you, they will not talk to you about money and getting started. If you ask this question earlier and they're not willing to talk about it, they're basically telling you that they're not ready yet. That person is in one of the other buying stages, needs to go back out there and go through your marketing content. But here's what you essentially find. And I'm going to summarize this because we're running out of time, but this is all in my book, The Quiet Authority High Ticket Selling System. I can't remember the name of my own book. I have to look it up because I renamed it the other day. But what I have people do is use an if I could, would you question. And if I could, would you question. Now, remember, at this point, it's the quiet authority sales framework. My God. Anyway, if you're interested in getting a hold of that, do this. Message me on social media. This book is not for free, but I'll give it to you if you can do one thing. Message me on social media and tell me your industry. Tell me the problem you're trying to solve. Just help me get to know you a little bit. That'll help me get to know who my followers are. And in exchange for that, anybody who sends me that type of response and information, I'll send the book. Don't just say I need the free book. Like, I won't give it to you. I'm trying to find out something about my audience in return for it. But here's what you do. Getting back to the question about competitors. You ask what I call an if I could, would you trial close. And this is the most important question you're going to ask on your sales call. And if you've asked the appropriate questions leading up to this, you're going to have the information necessary for doing it. You simply say, it sounds to me like if we could, and then you insert the outcome thereafter. Like, they're going to tell you by that point in the conversation, what type of outcome are they expecting? It sounds to me like if we could get this outcome without, and then whatever comes after without is all the hassles that they don't want to deal with, the things they don't like about the competitors they're looking at, the things they don't like about the people that they've worked with. It sounds to me like we could get this result without this, then we could do business today. Or maybe you don't say do business today, depending on whether you're talking to a business to customer, business to business prospect. But it sounds like if I could, positive, without negative, it sounds like, and then you say a specific decision they're going to make today. And then you're going to find out if they're ready to do something or not. If they're not ready to do something, then you take the information they give you from their feedback and you start refining your if I could, would you statement. You ask it a couple more times. And if you can't get to agreement there, you don't even talk about your product or service because they're not ready yet. You can try to sing and dance and like shout and all that other stuff and hope that they're going to buy, but they've already told you they're not ready to be sold. So don't waste your time, right? This is what you do when you sell before you actually tell the person how you're going to help them or tell the person what you're offering. You got to find out if they really want help first. If the thing you're delivering really can get the outcome without the other hassles, then you're in the money, right? If the other hassles that they tell you about are things that they're actually going to have to deal with when they hire you because they're just a natural part of like using the product or service, then you got to re-educate the person. But the if I could, would you, getting them to say a trial yes tells you, is this person at a point where they're at stage 4? Like you've turned a stage 3 buyer into a stage 4 buyer. And of course, there's 3 other points you addressed that I talk about in my book. You got to address the competence angle, the character angle, which I teach you how to do in You Are My Stories. And then there's the relevance angle, right? All those things you got to address. But those 4 questions are the most important thing because that's how you gather the information that helps you do a if I could, would you trial close, see what they say. And if they say yes, you say, okay, great, let's go ahead and get started. You don't say, okay, what do you want to do next or something like that. This is the time to be direct and tell them, okay, here's the first step of the process. I'm going to get your address or we want you to send your welcome package, whatever, what card do you want to use? Then you start directing the conversation. But if you get rebuttals objections at that point, it means you either misdiagnosed their stage or you didn't ask one of these questions, or maybe you glossed over the question. Like, are you ready to get started right away? Like, I hope you're ready to get started right away. And then you start with, I've seen people do this before where they'll say, yeah, I asked, how soon are you looking to question? And then I listen to the sales recording and they say, well, I hope you're ready to start doing this soon. So today we're going to talk about, and that I hope you're ready to start doing this soon was them asking the question. Look, you gotta like do the thing, right? You gotta make it do what it do. That's what my daddy say. You gotta make it do what it do. If you do this, you're gonna notice a major difference in the way people show up and in the results you're getting. You're not gonna have to wrestle with all these objections. If you get them, it means you didn't deal with it earlier, or maybe you got a person on who is not in one of those stages. But that's going to be it for today because I'm running out of time. What I want you to do is, if you've gotten something out of this video, to like, share, and subscribe wherever you found this on my social media. And if you're at the point where you're ready to actually do something about this beyond learn it, to actually do and apply it, you got two choices. You can do it by yourself. Like, I've got books that can help you do it, or we can talk about getting you in my group coaching or possibly working with my marketing agency to help you build this type of ecosystem you're looking for. I only want to talk to people who are actually serious about doing something. But if that's you, send me a comment. Okay. I'm not going to have some application for you to go through or anything like that. I want to have a conversation with you. Or if you just want to learn more, get more tips about how to communicate persuasively and get more people to show up in your business, ready to say yes to you without price resistance, without ideological resistance, ready to do something today, follow me on this social media channel. I do lives like this every week, and I shoot short videos that I send out to my social media channels. That's going to be all for today. Get out there and don't overcome objections. Get rid of them.